1 in 4 of us will suffer from poor mental health at some point in our lives. And figures for mental health, I think, have steadily kind of been on the rise for a long, long time. But I feel like it's only recently that people are being more open about their mental health issues and they're sharing their experiences on social media, here on YouTube, like I do, on Facebook, Instagram. But there's also a lot of bad stereotypes and I feel like a lot of people who suffer from bad mental health, they have a horrible stigma attached to them. And I do just want to say before I get into this podcast, I am someone who does have bad mental health and I've had poor mental health for the majority of my life. I understand the things that I am stereotyped as, and I know that people have made fun of me, and I know that people could do a lot more to open their minds up to what living with mental health is really about. And so I really do hope that this podcast today is going to be helpful, or you'll find it interesting at the very least. Because today we're going to talk about mental health stereotypes and mainly mental health in the workplace. So I do just want to recommend a website. This is targeted more specifically to if you're an employer, and it will be linked in the description box down below, this website, along with any other articles and stuff that I use for today's podcast. It'll all be linked below, but this is mentalhealthatwork.org.uk, and this website, I've had a quick scan through it, and it's all about helping your employers with poor mental health and how you should support them, and it even gives you some advice and some tips on how is best to support them. So definitely would recommend that, especially if you're an employer, that you have a look through that. But I do also want to bring up really quickly the employer pledge that a company called Time to Change are hosting right now. So basically, the Time to Change employer pledge is again all about supporting people with poor mental health in the workplace. And on their website, it states, the employer pledge can help you demonstrate your commitment to change how we think and act about mental health in the workplace and make sure that employees who are facing these problems feel supported. By signing the pledge, you will join a growing movement of more than 900 employers in England. And I think that's great. I mean, so many employers are really getting behind this pledge and they're supporting it. And the article actually continues on to say, mental health is an issue your organisation can't afford to ignore. 1 in 4 British workers are affected by conditions like anxiety, depression and stress every year. Mental ill health is the leading cause of sickness absence in the UK, costing an average of £1,035 per employee per year. 95% of employees calling in sick with stress gave a different reason. Looking after the mental health of your employees makes business sense. Tackling stigma can make a real difference to sickness absence rates, staff well-being and productivity, and retention. Since signing the employer pledge, 95% of employers said it had a positive impact on their organisation. So I feel like, whether you're an employer or an employee, that is a great thing to get involved with, and it's great that things like this are out there, but I don't think that they get the coverage that they really deserve. And I don't feel like sufferers of bad mental health are getting the support that they deserve in a lot of cases in the workplace. I know that I have been looked down upon because of my poor mental health in the workplace. I know that although because of the Equality Act, companies are basically, they have to employ people with disabilities, long-term illnesses, people with poor mental health, things like this. It's all covered by the Equality Act. However, a lot of companies just don't understand and don't know how to deal with people in situations like that. And again, it's not just mental health that this Equality Act covers. It's long-term conditions. If you're disabled, if you have long-term health issues, again, if you've got poor mental health, all sorts of things like that. And I really would recommend that if you're not familiar with the Equality Act, that you really do go and have a look into it, understand your rights. It's very, very important. I wouldn't want any of the people with any of those conditions, any of those problems, be pushed out, and I wouldn't want anyone to be essentially just screwed over. Basically, that's the blunt way to put it. I wouldn't want anyone to get messed around because of their poor mental health, or they're disabled. That is one of the things that really grinds my gears the most, is people who take advantage of those who are not as fortunate as themselves, and people who are disabled. And so yeah, please, if you're not familiar with the Equality Act, please go and look into it so you know what big companies can get away with, what they can't, what is right, what is wrong, all of that sort of stuff. But going back to Time to Change really quick, and the pledge that they have, it's fantastic that 95% of employers have said that it had a positive impact on their organisation. And it definitely does make sense business-wise to look after your employers and to tackle these horrible stigmas, these horrible stereotypes that people with poor mental health have in the workplace. And I definitely do think that it can make a difference to sickness absence rates and all of that sort of stuff. And of course, it's going to help with well-being, productivity. If people feel like they are welcomed in the workplace, then of course it's going to make them want to be there more, regardless of their condition. So I think that what Time for Change are doing with this employer pledge is fantastic. So I wanted to make you guys aware of that. But I want to move a little bit deeper into the stigmas and stereotypes of people with poor mental health, because that is a big, big problem, and that's, I think, where it all stems from. We know that for a long time, people who had bad mental health would suffer in silence, and if you spoke about it, you were either an attention seeker or you were just someone who was faking your condition. And I think that's really disgusting. And I think that those are the two main negative stereotypes for those of us with poor mental health. And I do want to bring up another article here. It's the Mental Health Foundation, and they do a little section here on stigma and discrimination of people with poor mental health. And again, this was a very interesting read, but it says, people with mental health problems say that the social stigma attached to mental ill health and the discrimination they experience can make their difficulties worse and make it harder to recover, which I can totally understand. I've definitely had that happen to me in the past, and it does make it harder to recover, and it does make your symptoms worse. And then, anyways, the article goes on to say that mental illness is common and it affects thousands of people in the UK, along with their friends, family, work colleagues, and society in general. And this is something I've always said about mental health problems, that it does not discriminate. You can't decide your fate, because mental health does not ever discriminate. It doesn't target a specific group of people or a specific person. It just targets whoever, whenever it feels like. And, some people develop it as they age. Some people, a traumatic event or something happens to them, and that's what brings poor mental health on. And some people are just born with it. Some people are born with poor mental health or can't remember their lives without having poor mental health. And I just think it's very, very sad that the second anyone says that they have poor mental health, they get shunned in a way out of society. They're just like, oh, well, you must be faking it. And I think, do you know what? I'm going to tackle this right now, because I've seen it happen with my own eyes and it absolutely disgusts me. I do realise that there are a small minority of people who do fake having mental health problems because it is an easy card to play, you know, specifically in the workplace. You know, a lot of people, all they have to say is, oh, well, I'm a little bit anxious or I'm depressed, and it gets them out of doing a certain job or working a certain time of the day or anything. And that really, really irritates me, but I'd like to think that it is only a small minority of people, and that the majority of people who open up about their mental health experiences are not doing it for attention, and they're doing it because they're truly suffering and they need help. I like to think that, you know, I like to think that the best in people, if that makes any sense. I just want people to be truthful, and I don't understand why people like that, you know, who do fake poor mental health, I don't understand why they exist, really, because it blows my mind how people can just lie. And it, of course, is people who fake mental health problems that give the real sufferers these horrible stereotypes that, oh, well, mental health sufferers just want attention, or they're faking it to get out of doing something. But yeah, I wanted to target that, get it out of the way. I do realise it happens. I've seen it with my own eyes. I saw it at university. I saw it a little bit at college. I saw it in the workplace as well. My mum sees it in her workplace too. Some of the stories that she's told me is like, whoa, it's just insane what people will do and what people will lie about in order to get out of doing something. It's crazy. But anyways, I think often what people want who are sufferers of bad mental health, I think what they want is just to be understood by their employer or by the company that they work for. I don't think that, you know, people want to be treated differently because they have bad mental health. I don't go into work and sit and demand to be treated differently than everyone else. I wouldn't want to be treated differently to anybody else. I just want someone who understands these issues, and if I behave a certain way or I do a certain thing, it's because of poor mental health, you know. And I think that's a lot of what other people are going to be thinking as well when it comes to mental health and their workplace. Do I feel like companies and the workplace are doing enough to help people with poor mental health? No, they can definitely do more. I've had people laugh at me. I have had people just make fun of me. I've had other situations happen where it's as if mental health is a joke, and it is really not. And also I've come across people, not just in the workplace but in general, who just don't believe that mental health is a problem. And of course it's a problem, of course it exists, it has done for a long, long time, but people were ashamed to talk about it until recently. And is it any wonder that people don't want to come out and talk about their problems when they get told that they're lying about it or they just want attention? I mean, I can't believe that I have come into contact with people who don't think that mental health exists and that it's a problem. I mean, those kind of people, personally, it just blows my mind how people can think like that and be so oblivious and kind of ignorant as well about the situation. So yes, of course, you know, people at work need to be supported if they have poor mental health, and the workplace needs to do more in order to support people with bad mental health, and they need to tackle the stigmas, they need to tackle these negative stereotypes. And, you know, at the end of the day, I would hope that those who are faking having mental health problems, they're just a small minority of people who say they've got mental health issues. And this article that I mentioned earlier with the stigma and discrimination of people with poor mental health, again, it's a very, very interesting read. So I'm going to read a little bit more about it. So it says that many people's problems are made worse by the stigma and discrimination they experience from society, but from also families, friends, and employers. Nearly 9 out of 10 people with mental health problems say that stigma and discrimination have had a negative effect on their lives. We know that people with mental health problems are amongst the least likely of any group with a long-term health condition or disability to find work, be in a steady long-term relationship, live in decent housing, and be socially included in mainstream society. And again, I totally understand all of that. And all of those apply to me. I struggled for a long time to find work because my mental health was holding me back. A lot of employers, they don't want to hire someone with mental health problems because we're seen as unreliable, or we're seen as unpredictable, violent, or all of those negative type things, like somewhat criminals in a way as well, I think. So, we do have to fight with all of these negative stereotypes. Being in a steady long-term relationship, I can understand that one too, because I've had major issues with, ex-partners who just didn't understand mental health and did not make any effort to support me and didn't want to support me. And yeah, I mean, it does impact relationships. It impacts numerous different aspects of your lives, and people need to be aware of that. Live in decent housing, it doesn't apply to me, and I think that's mainly just because my OCD side of it kind of comes out then, and I'm always, I'm very proud of the house that I live in. I'm always tidying it, I'm always doing stuff to it, and so that doesn't really apply to me, but I would understand how it would affect others with poor mental health. And the final one, be socially included in mainstream society, definitely. For a long, long time, I felt very much like I was being pushed out of social situations. People didn't want to include me in their parties, in their lives, because they saw me as an outsider. And you know what? To some extent, I am an outsider, but it's made me very unsociable, and it's made me someone who just wants to stay inside a lot by myself or with my family. And obviously that's not good, and I have been trying to branch out lately and be more sociable and communicate better. But of course, yeah, it is going to stop people who don't suffer from mental health. It's going to stop them from wanting to spend time with people with poor mental health, because a lot of people don't understand mental health. And that's why I think, not just in the workplace, but in general, people need to make more of an effort to be aware of these problems, and they need to be aware of that we're not dangerous, horrible psychopaths, and, we're not bad people. We're just misunderstood, I think. So again, I'm going on to read more of this article. It carries on to talk about how society in general has very stereotyped views about mental illness. And then it also carries on to talk about the media, which I found was very interesting as well. Media reports often link mental illness with violence or portray people with mental health problems as dangerous, criminal, evil, or very disabled and unable to live normal, fulfilled lives. This is far from the case. Research shows that the best way to challenge those stereotypes is through first-hand contact with people with experience of mental health problems. A number of national and local campaigns are trying to change public attitudes to mental illness. These include the National Voluntary Sector Campaign Time to Change, which obviously I brought up recently. And then the last paragraph of the article talks about the Equality Act. So the Equality Act 2010 makes it illegal to discriminate directly or indirectly against people with mental health problems in public services and functions, access to premises, work, education, associations and transport. So please be aware of the Equality Act, and make sure, of course, that you're aware of your rights and aware of what is right and what is wrong when it comes to discrimination and mental health and disabilities and long-term health issues. Please be aware of that. I can't stress that enough. But yeah, bottom line, I think of this podcast, because I can talk about this all day, is that people in the workplace need to do more to support people with poor mental health. We don't want to be treated differently. We just want to be understood a little bit better. I definitely feel like a lot of people in the workplace just don't understand or don't bother to even try to understand that mental health is a real thing and that it can cause a lot of problems, and a lot of us aren't attention seeking, and the majority of us definitely aren't lying about what we're going through either. So I want to know your thoughts and opinions on this. Are you someone who has poor mental health, is at work, and do you feel like your employer is handling your situation well? Do you think they could do better? Let me know in the comments section down below. Thank you so much for listening to this podcast, and congrats to you. I take my hat off to you if you made it to the end of this, because I don't know, it seems like I've spoken for ages about this particular topic this week. So the link to my podcast playlist will be in the description box down below. If you like this podcast, make sure to leave it a thumbs up. If you're new here, click on the subscribe button. And of course, all of the sources that I've used in this video and not used in this video as well, just some extra sources, I'm going to throw them in there in the description box so you can check them out if you want to. There will be one on the Equality Act in there if you're interested or if you need to look through it. So I hope you enjoyed. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope to see you guys in my next video.